So hi, I'm Kayla. I will be talking today about my research in online distraction at work as a moderator of the relations of need thwarting to subjective vitality and work engagement. So first, I'm going to provide some background with some introduction, and then I'll walk you through my hypotheses, methodology, the analyses that we ran, and a brief discussion of the study. So the study had a self-determination theory perspective. And as we may or may not remember, SDT posits that there are three basic psychological needs for all people: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. When those needs are fulfilled, people thrive. And when they are frustrated or thwarted, there are negative consequences. Low need satisfaction, need frustration, and need thwarting are not the same thing. They produce different magnitudes of negative effects. So while low need satisfaction doesn't have to include need frustration requires low need satisfaction, kind of like the relationship between a square and a rectangle. And then need thwarting is the active phenomenological aspect where needs are actively being frustrated. So in the workplace, low need satisfaction in the relatedness realm might look like feeling like you don't have as many friends at work as you would like. Whereas need thwarting could be not being invited to like happy hours that your coworkers are going to or something like that. The study also touches on engagement, so I'll provide some background there. There are three proposed forms of engagement: trait, state, and behavioral. Trait engagement, as the name suggests, is related to personality and includes positive views of life and work. State engagement is characterized by vitality and absorption, which can present as high levels of organizational involvement and commitment. And then behavioral engagement includes extra role behaviors, so doing things outside of your job description, as well as proactivity. The present study focuses on state and behavioral engagement. And then on the other side is disengagement. There are a whole bunch of negative outcomes associated with it, including low vitality, lack of commitment, withdrawal, counterproductive work behaviors, and so forth. And unfortunately, disengagement is super common. One study found that over 70% of employees are either passively or actively disengaged. And this study is going to be looking at that active disengagement piece. So this is the hypothesized model. Hypothesis one is shown with the gray arrows there. And it states that basic psychological need thwarting and frustration in the workplace decrease work engagement and vitality. Hypothesis two is shown with the blue arrows there. And it states that basic psychological need support in the workplace supports work engagement and vitality. And then hypothesis three is shown with these green arrows. And it states that need thwarting and frustration are associated with greater involvement with online distractions. And then the, novel piece of the study is in hypothesis four, which states that engagement in online distractions buffers the adverse effects of need thwarting on subjective vitality and work engagement. So that's referring to the online distraction as a moderator of need thwarting that I mentioned in the title slide of this presentation. So the study was conducted on MTurk. We had 248 participants initially, but 16 couldn't accurately tell me what 7 minus 3 was and failed the attention check. So we ended up with 232 participants worth of data to work with. The only requirements for participating in this study were that you had to work at least 20 hours per week in the same job, and you had to live and work in the United States. And the study was a cross-sectional design. So we measured work engagement, and that scale had subscales for absorption, dedication, and vigor. And then we also measured vitality, need satisfaction, need frustration, and need thwarting. And all those scales have very strong alphas, given that they're very established in the literature. And then we collected a self-report of the frequency and time people spent engaging in a small selection of distraction behaviors. So The online ones were online shopping, social media use, and games. And then we also collected information on how often and how much time people spent socializing with coworkers at work. But the results for that were very poor, so they were excluded from future analyses. And with the in-person distraction excluded, the online distraction measures had an alpha of 0.77, which is pretty good for a measure that I just came up with myself. So first we did some correlational analyses. The orangey, yellow, and red boxes relate to hypothesis 1, and we found that need thwarting and frustration were both negatively correlated with work engagement and vitality, which is in line with all the literature that has said that when you're in a need thwarting environment, you're going to suffer from it or because of it. And then the greenish gray box relates to hypothesis 2, and we found that need satisfaction was positively correlated with work engagement and vitality. So again, no surprise there. When you're in a need satisfying environment, you're gonna benefit from that. And then the ovals are pertaining to hypothesis 3. We found that need thwarting and frustration were positively correlated with online distractions. So when you're in an environment where your needs are being thwarted or frustrated, you're more inclined to seek out online distractions. And then just relating back to the previous slide, when you look at the numbers for in-person distraction, a lot of them aren't statistically significant, or if they are, the effects are really low. So you can see why we didn't include those in future analyses. Next, we did a structural equation model. In the initial SEM had an issue with strong intercorrelations, so engagement and some of the other paths were removed, resulting in this one, which had pretty good fit. And we found the expected results between need satisfaction, frustration, and thwarting. So walking through the SEM here, we found that need thwarting predicted 64% of variance in need frustration with a beta of 0.80, and that in turn predicted 11% of variance in online distraction with a beta of 0.33. Going down the other side, we found that need thwarting predicted 33% of variance in need satisfaction with a beta of negative 0.57 and 57% of variance in vitality with a beta of 0.76. And we didn't find a lot of covariance between need satisfaction and frustration or vitality and distraction. Next, we did a moderation analysis and found a significant interaction. There was no significant main effect of online distraction on work engagement, but there were significant main effects of need thwarting on engagement, as well as of both online distraction and need thwarting on vitality. So then comparing the simple slopes here, we found that online distraction provides a buffer on need thwarting for both vitality and engagement, as indicated by the increasing slope and decreasing distance between high and low need thwarting as you go from low online distraction to high online distraction. So for somebody in a very need thwarting environment, if they're able to and do engage in online distraction, then their engagement and vitality are both better than those who cannot or do not engage in online distractions in those need thwarting environments. So now a discussion of the study. Because it was cross-sectional, we could infer causality. You can make an experiment in the future to hopefully get at that a little more. Additionally, the participants were surveyed during a very unique historical time, a pandemic, and that has really affected people's work lives with more people working from home or maybe being less secure with their employment. So it would be interesting to replicate this study in the future during more normal times to see if the effect is as strong or stronger, or how the results might compare to these ones. So we found that need thwarting predicted online distraction, and then that online distraction buffered the negative effects of need thwarting, which is super interesting that a negative environment produced a behavior that helped reduce the negative effects of that environment, which I think suggests that people are adaptive in pursuing need frustration or need satisfaction and flourishing. So why might online distraction be effective in, sorry, I got distracted by the chat. Why might online distraction be effective at buffering the negative effects of need thwarting? So I think it's because it sort of checks all the boxes of the needs that you might need met. So for example, if your need for relatedness is not being met in the workplace, then by going on social media, that might be sort of like a makeshift way of fulfilling that need. For competence, people tend to do things that they're good at, right, when they get a choice. So if you play a game on your phone that you enjoy and are good at, that might support your need for competence. And then for autonomy with online distraction, the way we looked at it, people were able to choose what they do when they're online distracting, for how long, and when. And one might think, oh, okay, so people engaging in online distractions is good for them, so we should give them more break time so that they have structured time to do that. And I would say no. By scheduling in break times for people to engage in online distractions, you're taking away the opportunity for them to choose when to distract. And that might be really important because if they have a particularly need thwarting experience, then maybe they need to take a step back and engage in an online distraction to sort of soothe themselves. And by not being able to choose when you online distract because you have this specific break time that you're supposed to do it during, that might reduce or erase the effects that we found in this study. Additionally, it's cool that there's a buffering effect of online distractions on need thwarting when needs aren't met, but the goal should be to create a needs supportive work environment such that there aren't negative effects that need to be buffered. Finally, expanding the study, future directions, it can easily be applied to other life domains. As I was writing my paper, I was thinking of all the times that I've sat behind somebody in class and they're on Facebook or they're doing something decidedly not taking notes, which is peak online distraction, right? So applying this study or examining these principles in an academic setting could be really interesting. And I'm sure there are other areas of life that this would also be applicable. So that's all I've got for you. Any questions?